Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Beaudry. I support the Women in STEM initiative at the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Welcome to the event, Women in STEM, 5-Minute Thesis, What Inspired You? If you have friends or colleagues who couldn't make it, not to worry, this whole thing will be recorded and will be posted onto OSPE's YouTube channel. As we gather virtually for this event, I would like to begin by recognizing that our participants are located in many different areas. Today, I am speaking to you from Ottawa, the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We recognize and honor their enduring relationship to this land and their ongoing contributions to it. I encourage you to explore and learn more about the land you are on by visiting native-land.ca. Your host for this event is Deanna Mosque. She is the Women in STEM Network co-chair and an experienced health physicist, and really so much more. With a master's degree in health physics and a PhD in medical physics. Over to you, Deanna.
Thank you, Jessica. Hello and welcome again. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about what you can expect over the next hour. We're going to be showing you some videos prepared by 5 incredible women. Having a video has allowed people to prepare their statements and put a little bit of thought into it rather than keeping everybody on the spot. After that, we'll have them join us in real life for some Q&As where you'll be able to have a chance to ask anything you want. If you do have a question at the end and you'd like to ask it in person, we welcome you to raise your hand, turn on your camera if you wish, and ask your question. If you'd prefer to use the chat function, we do have somebody monitoring the chat function so that you can ask your question in writing. So first up, we're going to start with our first video from Alyssa. Alyssa's curiosity has led her down many new paths, including knitting and crochet. But let's hear a little bit about Alyssa's journey as a student.
Hi everyone, I would like to start by saying how honored and grateful I am to be part of this panel, especially alongside 4 other impressive women in STEM. I hope you all enjoy hearing a bit about me and the path that got me to where I am today. So my name is Alyssa Sinarari, and I'm going into my 4th year of nuclear engineering at UOIT, or Ontario Tech University, and I am currently working for the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, or CNSC. So let's start from the beginning. When I was little, I was always interested in science and math. I was eager to learn more and thoroughly enjoyed school, and was interested in building things such as Lego and crafts. When asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, I always said doctor, because I knew I liked science, and that is the main scientific career children know about. This clearly changed over time when I learned more about different and specific sciences. My interest in clean energy started young, and I have a vivid memory of 5th grade when I learned about renewable energy sources. I did a project on solar energy, and I was so interested on how it can further protect the environment through sustainable and clean energy sources. In high school, this interest was reignited when I discovered the nuclear engineering program at UOIT. Honestly, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my future, and I was planning on applying to general engineering types, such as mechanical, and going to figure out the specifics later on, which is completely a viable option. Fortunately, when I went on a tour of my school, I learned about their nuclear engineering program and what it entailed, and what future jobs could come of it. I knew this is what I wanted to do, and this is how I could make an impact. I have never been prouder of a decision. I'm now going into my 4th year of nuclear engineering, and throughout my time as a woman in STEM, I have faced adversity of being one of few women in my classes. In group projects, rather than being seen as an equal and utilized for my technical skills and knowledge, I felt as though some of my ideas were pushed to the side when others with similar ideas were not. Looking back, I wish I confronted the people who put me in these uncomfortable situations instead of brushing them off. Lucky, not all is negative, and there are people who respect my input and treat me as an equal. Being one of few women in a room can be hard, and it is unfortunate that many of us have experienced similar adversities in these situations. In general, being the only woman in a room has its challenges, and often makes us feel like we want to make ourselves smaller and not draw attention to us. But I believe that no one should have to do that, and we should make ourselves bigger and state our opinions with force. After my 3rd year, I took a 16-month internship with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, which I am currently completing. I have 6 months left of my internship, and over the last 10 months, I have worked in several divisions, including regulatory operations coordination, internal quality management, innovation and research, and health sciences and environmental compliance. I am currently working in the Darlington Regulatory Program Division, and I'm so grateful for this internship and being able to see so many different aspects of the nuclear industry. I applied to the CNSC because above all else, I am interested in protecting the environment. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission regulates the use of nuclear energy and the production, possession, and uses of nuclear substances to ultimately protect the health and safety of the environment and Canadians. I cannot think of a better organization to work for than those who create and instill the regulations that allow nuclear energy and all nuclear substances to be safely used and distributed. I have gained a lot of knowledge over the last 10 months, and I've always felt welcome and respected in the workplace, no matter what division I've worked with. By far, my favorite part of my job and working for this unique organization is seeing the direct impact it has on communities and how information I share can alter people's opinions on nuclear power. I want to end with advice I would give to other women aspiring to be in a STEM role. Never let what anyone else says discourage you from following the path that you want to be on. With that, don't discourage yourself, and even if classes and the job get harder and more technical, which they do, stay focused because you can do it. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak to you all and for organizing such a great and powerful event.
Totally agree. Don't discourage yourself. And oftentimes your own personal drive can help you do what you want to do. Too often we are our own worst critics. So thank you for sharing your insights. The next video is from Emily Tarl. Emily has worked in the nuclear power industry or the power industry for 25 years. And in 2021, Emily was recognized as part of Canada's top 100 most powerful women by the Women's Executive Network. Let's see her video now.
Hello, I'm Emily Tarl, the Deputy Site Vice President at Ontario Power Generation's Pickering Nuclear Station. I want to share with you a little bit about my journey as an engineer. First off, what inspired me to become an engineer? I have to say, it was a little bit by accident. I grew up in a small town, Perth, Ontario, and I would say our guidance department there perhaps wasn't very imaginative. I did very well in math and science, and when I went in grade 11 and asked, what are some of the options that I could do in my career, I was told that I could be an engineer or I could be a scientist. And since I didn't know what a scientist did, I chose engineering. I did go to McMaster University in Hamilton. I chose McMaster because it had a common first year program because I wasn't sure what discipline I would like to enter into, and I thought that would be a good way to get a feel for some of the other disciplines and a better understanding of really what it would be like having a career in engineering. I ended up choosing civil engineering in my second year, mostly because I really like the practical application of civil. I like things that I can touch and feel and see how they work, and civil and mechanical were the two that interested me the most. I ended up leaning more towards civil as I had previously aspired to be an architect and realized I wasn't creative enough necessarily to be an architect. So I figured that civil engineering was the next best thing. Some advice that I could give to women aspiring to become engineers, I would say talk to someone who is in an industry, in an engineering role or a STEM role, and really get to understand what a career as an engineer can be. I been very, very surprised throughout my career how far my civil engineering degree has taken me. I did start working in civil engineering directly out of school. Some of my peers did not, however. Some went into banking. One woman opened up her own bed and breakfast. But it's really enabled me to have a really strong basis in really just in learning and being curious about the world around me. At Ontario Power Generation, I've been able to move through primarily roles in engineering and design into projects, and the role that I'm currently in right now is more of an operations role, supporting the day-to-day operation of the nuclear facility at Pickering. When I graduated with my civil engineering degree, I certainly didn't expect that I would end up in this particular place where I would say I don't directly use my engineering degree in terms of the technical expertise that I learned in the civil discipline, but I am using all of those really great skills that I gained through that education and through my earlier career as an engineer in my day-to-day support of the plant. So really, I would say understand what it's like. There's a really wonderful social aspect to being an engineer. You may think it's just technical. I'm going going to be preparing calculations all day long and not necessarily have the ability to interact within a workplace or have an impact on the broader society. I would say that couldn't be further from the truth. Most engineering work is not done in isolation. It needs to be done, and is, in my opinion, much better when it is done in a collaborative environment. I'm a professional engineer, and I really uphold the standard of being a professional engineer and what that means to the public, as well as the broader social impact that you can have. My work that I do here with power generation is really making a dent in terms of climate change, keeping the lights on in Ontario, and I feel really good about that and my contribution to that. Some hurdles I've experienced as a woman in STEM, I mean, you can imagine what they may be. Really, a lot of times it would be getting my voice to be heard, overcoming some of the issues places where I may not feel as confident, given that I'm not feeling that I'm well represented in terms of quite often being the only female at the table, and really just having to ensure that I understand what that bias might be, and being prepared to kind of work through that and ask for support where I need it. Have mentorship and advocates throughout my career have really helped me with that. I'm very happy to be here today. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Emily. She mentions mentorship. Outside of OPG, Emily is known for her dedication to mentorship and support of women in engineering through organizations like Women in Nuclear. Most of these organizations you can join as a student. So if you're early in your career or still deciding, feel free to check some of them out and find your own mentor and group of people to work with. Our next video is from Nicole Simon. Her passions extend beyond nuclear science and technology and include coffee, landscape photography, and playing electric guitar. Let's hear from Nicole now.
Hello everyone, welcome to the panel discussion. My name is Nicole Simon, I'm 37 years old this year, and I have a degree in nuclear engineering from the University of Ontario Institute of Technology in Oshawa, Ontario. I work at the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, currently as a senior project officer in the Advanced Reactors Licensing Group, and I have been with the Commission since 2010. My current primary focus is to be a technical integrator and licensing specialist for the Darlington New Nuclear Project in Clarington, Ontario, reviewing the license application for license to construct. If I had to generalize something about me and my career into a single sentence, I would have to say that I love science and I'm highly interested in learning how things work. I find it fascinating to break down and analyze complex topics and things, and just start imagining how it was built, how it was constructed. I love to learn new things, and I constantly get inspired to learn those new things. I also love music, photography, and all things creative and creative ways to express myself. So, how did I discover engineering? Well, I discovered engineering in the 11th grade. I found that it was the science of applying scientific principles to real-world things, real-world problems, to solve real-world problems and build functional things that we use every day. Discovered there was a way to meld together my love for science, my passion for understanding things, and building something from that. I knew then that I wanted to be an engineer. I just didn't know what kind of engineering I wanted to do. Did I want to be a mechanical, civil, electrical, chemical engineer? I had no idea. I ultimately chose nuclear engineering because I was intrigued by the fact that we build these massive, complicated structures and power plants to generate electricity, but are powered by simultaneously these really, really small, tiny particles, unimaginably tiny things flying around at fast speeds. Particles are things that you can't see, can't touch, can't taste, can't smell, or otherwise feel, yet they are the base way that we use to generate electricity, and are used, of course, in many other ways and many other aspects to benefit us. I'm still as passionate about nuclear today as I was back then, and will probably be going forward in the near future. As a woman in engineering, even in my time, it was a bit of a struggle to be taken seriously. In my university class, for example, there was really only one other woman present. While I had the same basic training, qualifications, and education as everyone else, I wasn't able to be seen at the same level because of my gender. I felt I had to constantly prove my worth to everyone else simply because they never saw me as an equal. To some extent, there is still a problem with this kind of thinking in some areas of the nuclear industry to this day, but there have been massive improvements in the last decade or so. There's finally recognition that women, and especially young women, in engineering are just as passionate and just as knowledgeable in their field as everyone else, and that initiatives like Women in STEM and Women in Engineering encourage women to pursue their passions in science, engineering, or mathematics. If I had some advice to give to young women who want to pursue a career in science, engineering, or math, I'd sum it up in a few words. Persist, follow your passions, and stay passionate. Know that engineering is hard, but don't give it up if it's something that you want to do. It's a very fun, it can be rewarding, and very fulfilling to solve problems and create something. Find a role model or someone who inspires you, and think about what characteristics of that person inspire you. For me, my role model was Madame Curie. I found her determination in her field and her bravery to continue her studies and her research, even in the face of World War II and persecution, to be highly admirable. And it was those two characteristics that inspired me. Take advantage of networking and support groups like Women in STEM and Women in Nuclear. They offer excellent opportunities to engage with other women and male allies as well in the field, and bring up your professional networks, and can serve as additional layers of support and inspiration to you. And finally, and most importantly of all, know that if you are inspired by science and inspired by engineering and want to pursue a career in it, there is no stopping you. There is nothing to tell you that you can't study what makes you passionate, nothing to tell you that you can't follow your career path if you choose. And finally, know that there is an entire network of women in science and engineering that are encouraging you and supporting you every step of the way. Thank you, and look forward to any further discussions that we have in this panel discussion.
Thank you, Nicole. The way that you describe nuclear engineering is fascinating. The big buildings contrasting with the tiny particles. Too many of us forget how truly wondrous engineering and science are up close. Now we'll spend a moment with Moni Aranciola. Through her PhD, Moni has been studying the next generation of reactors. She is a passionate advocate for women's empowerment. Moni, to you.
Everyone, my name is Moni. I work at the Directorate of Security and Safeguards of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. I'm also wrapping up my PhD research in chemical engineering at the University of New Brunswick. So, I've been asked to share my career story to inspire women in engineering, and I'm so excited to be doing this. I have always been an ambitious young woman, and I grew up in Africa where women are not really encouraged to be super ambitious or career oriented. A lot of the focus have always been on the male gender, while women are raised to be supported. So I did not see a lot of women go into engineering. Fortunately, I have a very supportive family, especially my dad, who happens to be an engineer. He encourages me to push myself, become anything I want to be, and challenge the status quo. Although my home was a safe haven, I remember during my bachelor's degree education, I faced gender discrimination from my male colleagues because I was a woman and I was one of the top students in my class. So it was not a very healthy learning environment. This began to affect my confidence level, especially because we did not have lots of female students in my class, so I did not have the much needed support system at school. During my second year, my grades started to drop and I failed the course. This happens to be one of the lowest moments in my life. I remember telling myself that maybe I'm studying the wrong course, maybe I'm not called out for engineering. But I called my dad and he came to my hostel at 5 a.m. He held my hands and we went for a long walk. We had a long talk, and one of the key things he said was challenges will come while you are trying to achieve your dreams, but they are not meant to pull you down. They are stepping stones to greater heights. I kept those words in my heart, and they've been my anchor during the challenging moments in my career and in life. So I persevered, and through perseverance, I came out as one of the top students in my class during graduation. A few years ago, I relocated to Canada for graduate studies. It's been a positive learning environment for me. There have been many rewards as well as challenges. Last year was tough. A lot of my laboratory experiments for my PhD failed. I felt like quitting graduate school. Thankfully, I have some fantastic men and women who kept speaking to me, encouraging me, and helped me navigate that path. Eventually, all of my experiments are done and successful because I persevered again and I had such a great support system. So, dear woman, dream and dream big. Challenge the status quo. Do not let society define you. In your journey to greater heights, challenges will come. Do not let them bring you down. Don't give up. Persevere. Don't allow fear, the fear of failure, or even failure, stop you from achieving your dreams. Personally, I've not gotten to where I want to be. I've not arrived at my destination, but 3 things have helped me in my career journey. The first is perseverance. The second is not being afraid of challenges. And lastly, support system. Apart from my husband and my family, I have some amazing men and women as mentors who have inspired me, held my hands. They have given me the platform and opportunity to thrive. I've also been privileged to hear their stories and learn from their experiences. So, building a strong career network, building relationships is really important and key. Thank you.
Thank you. It's so helpful to have a wonderful support system, including family, friends, and even just colleagues. Always remember to reach out when you need help because challenges will come and they are great stepping stones to getting further ahead in your life and career. Our final video is from Ruth Wilkins. Ruth bridges the science and engineering gap. At Health Canada, she works to ensure the safety of Canadians by understanding the biological effects of ionizing radiation on mammalian systems. Ruth, it's your turn.
Thank you for inviting me to speak to you about my experience as a woman in STEM. I should start by admitting that I am not an engineer. However, I did start my career in physics, so I definitely navigated an education in a male-dominated field. I should also disclose up front that, as a woman in STEM, I did not experience any significant barriers at any stage in my career. I just followed my heart and ended up here. I have to say that the biggest inspiration in my life came from my mother. My mother immigrated from England in the 1950s and arrived in Canada as a fully trained physiotherapist, which apparently was unusual. I learned this years later when I was visiting Halifax. I went to Pier 21, where you can look up records of people arriving by boat to North America. When we found my mother's records, with her occupation listed, the person assisting me said, "How unusual for a woman of that time to have an occupation. They're usually just listed as housewife." It had never really occurred to me until then that she was way ahead of her time and forging the way for women to have meaningful careers. And when my father passed away, when I was very young, my mother was able to support our family single-handedly. So she always encouraged me to get an education and a good career so that I would never be dependent on anyone else. She supported me in all of my choices, even if she couldn't understand much about what I was doing. I think one of her characteristics that led to her success was just being purely stubborn and doing what she wanted. So I guess I never questioned that I couldn't do the same. As for my love of physics, this started in high school, where I had an excellent male physics teacher who encouraged us all, regardless of gender. This was followed by an outstanding physics first-year teacher, also male, who encouraged me and mentored me throughout my undergraduate degree. I was absolutely the minority as a woman in physics, but that didn't bother me. I was just following my heart. As my university path developed, I started to move towards biophysics and finally medical physics, getting my PhD from Carleton University. I've now been working at Health Canada for 27 years and I've had an amazing career. So let me just tell you a story about my first day of work at Health Canada. At that time, that was part of the Radiation Protection Bureau. I had been offered a postdoc position near the end of my PhD and told just to contact them when I had graduated and I would have a job. So between getting the job offer and starting the job, I got pregnant. I showed up for my first day of work, 8 weeks pregnant, and I was terrified to tell my 60-something-year-old male boss. What was he going to think? Well, when I told him, he looked at me very seriously and said, I guess we will just have to make sure you don't get exposed to any radiation. That was it. The next day, he came back to me and told me that he had been looking into maternity leave benefits for postdocs, and at that time there were none, not even employment insurance. He said that this was not tolerable and he would just have to hire me as a real employee so I could get benefits while on leave. So I was hired and have worked there ever since. Once again, a male colleague who was completely supportive of my career. As for a career as a research scientist in the federal government, I must say it's a pretty good gig. I spent my career trying to understand the biological effects of exposure to ionizing radiation, also known as playing in the lab. I've also built a biodosimetry program that provides a service to Canadians to measure how much radiation they've been exposed to by looking at biomarkers in their blood cells. We've been able to collaborate with the Canadian Space Agency and provide biodosimetry for astronauts, and I've even got to meet a few of them. I get to travel the world to visit laboratories, give training courses, and attend conferences and meetings. All great stuff. But what I love most about my job is that every day is different, and I get to interact with amazing people who are dedicated to their jobs. Oh, and the benefits at the federal government, they're pretty awesome too. So without having to face many barriers as a woman in STEM, but recognizing they exist, I'm not sure I can provide any great advice for how to deal with them. The one challenge that many women will face in their career and that I can speak to is having a family and maintaining a healthy work-life balance. I can tell you that early in my career, and you saw how early in my career I started a family, I found it difficult to watch my male colleagues progress faster since they did not take any leave. Although it's great to see that more and more partners are taking parental leave now. Now, years later, it's all equalized. None of it really mattered. You tend to catch up, so don't worry about those early years. My first piece of advice on this front, though, is to find a supportive partner. And secondly, work hard while you're at work and then go home and focus on your family. You will never regret spending time with your kids. So maybe I've just been lucky, or maybe I've been blindly oblivious. My advice to you is, surprisingly, follow your heart. Do what interests you, and it will lead to a fulfilling career. Work hard, learn everything you can, and be engaged. Never shy away from opportunities, and be like my mother. Be a little stubborn, or maybe assertive is a better word. But if that's what it takes to get you where you need to be, then that's what you should do.
Thank you. It's good to hear that it's not always about challenges. It's very important for all of us to remember these things, that some days you're going to be different and there might be a harder day than others, and there are going to be good days along the way. We are seeing that more and more partners are taking parental leave, and employers are more and more supportive. And as we've grown into a flexible workspace, you can imagine that today's workplace doesn't look like the workplace that many of us started in. I'm going to invite the panelists to turn their cameras on, and I'm going to invite and ask anyone out there who has a question to either put it in the chat or ask it in person by raising their hand. So if anybody has a question, we invite you to do that now. And if not, then I will open the floor to, we have some questions ready for us as well. So I'll give everybody a moment to think about their questions. And Gabriella, I will invite you to ask the first question.
Sure, thank you. The first question I have is for Emily. You mentioned the importance of being aware of yes, you mentioned the importance of being aware of biases that may exist, essentially being aware of your environment. Have you made efforts, or have efforts been made in the workplaces you've been at to reduce these biases?
Yeah, thanks, Gabrielle. That's a bit of a loaded question, so we could talk for quite a while on it. But I'll focus specifically on what I meant by biases, and a lot of it isn't even necessarily actually there. So in some cases, it's a perception of a bias. So I always try when I'm coming into something to be very aware of the environment, and then also how am I feeling in the environment, and maybe what am I thinking that someone else is thinking that they're actually not thinking, and how can I kind of get the facts around that. But some of the biases you've heard the other speakers talk to, one being the only woman in the room, and just what that means in terms of feeling included, and feeling that you're welcome in that space. Sometimes I've gotten a lot of well, you've just gotten this role or this promotion because you're a woman, and they were looking to bring a woman into the role. I got an engineering background. There's a lot of bias around engineers and sort of the stereotypical engineer. I would say that's probably maybe what I faced the most in terms of going in places and having people assuming that I have maybe a different intention than I do. But in terms of what we've done in the workplace, a lot of it is kind of focusing on being authentic is super important to me, but I think you also need to be able to understand your environment and adapt to your environment. So I can look back on my career and I can say I've never feel like I've compromised myself. I always feel that I've been able to be true. However, there were places where I did need to adapt my approach to better suit the environment that I was in. So that's a way that I can kind of do that. Now, I'm not a huge proponent of a fix the women kind of an approach. So one of the other ways that we can do this is drawing in maybe those quieter voices. I always encourage anyone, male, female, if you're coming into a room, sit at the table. If there's space, and there's space up front, and there's space at the table, 100% get yourself in there, sit at the table, and then what we can do is reach out and try to pull in those quieter voices. Also building on comments that may kind of get left. Like I can say, hey, Kathy made an excellent point there. Now let's build on that. Let's have some further discussion around it. So I think kind of to summarize, first step is kind of be aware of which biases may be real and which ones may be just in your head that you're thinking you're there, and then engaging to do what you can within your sphere of influence to support others around who may not sort of be as confident to speak up for themselves.
Thank you. I think those are really important words to remember. Before I move to the next question, does anybody else in the panel wish to address or add something to that statement? Nope. All right. So we'll move to the next question, which is from Dr. Rachel Lane. Dr. Lane.
Hi, everybody. Great videos, really inspiring. My question is for Ruth Wilkins. Ruth, you had a very supportive boss and a very supportive work environment. What do you say to women who perhaps aren't in such a supportive female oriented occupation?
Well, I think you just have to do what you love, and it might not always be easy, but just, I mean, as Rachel mentioned, my lab is quite female dominated, although it wasn't that way when I started. But I would say that don't shy away from those situations where it might be a male dominated field, because this is, you're young and you are the ones who will make change in this world. And, as women, we're the ones who have to forge those difficult path and try to make a change and get into those positions where they are more male dominated and demonstrate that we can work as efficiently and effectively as our male counterparts. So I would not shy away from male dominated positions at all. It's just the path that I followed, that I ended up in. But I think if it had been a more male dominated job site than I'm working in now, I would have continued on the same way and just done my job and kept on going. And when you're working for the federal government, you never know what you're going to encounter, what sort of workspace. But in places that are large, like the federal government, there are always support systems. If there are ever any issues, you can reach out to these support systems and get help if you're in an toxic environment. So just keep doing what you want to do and face those barriers and try to break through them.
Thank you very much.
I could add a little bit to that as well. As I really encourage people to focus on what are you bringing to the table, right? So you are bringing something uniqueness, not only just from yourself as a person, but also from being a woman that you're bringing into that environment, and looking at the strengths and the differences that you're bringing, the diversity into that environment, and also someone's got to do it, right? Somebody has to be there and show the way. I get tremendous good vibes when people tell me I didn't want to do that, I was worried, and I see you doing it, and now I know I can do it. I know I can have kids. I know I can take on these challenges because I'm seeing that you've been able to do it, and you haven't had to change yourself, and you're not. I don't see you at work 12 hours a day, and you're still mostly smiling. And so I think that's a piece too. Is don't look at it as a negative thing. Look at that positive thing that you're bringing into that work environment and paving the way for others to come after you.
Thank you. I see a question from the audience. I think it's Sarah.
Yeah, thanks so much. So my question is for anyone who wants to offer an opinion. Everyone spoke about the importance of mentorship and the importance of what good mentors can do to sort of help bring people along. And I'm just wondering, maybe the panel can give us some perspectives on when it's a good time to be a mentor. I think sometimes people feel like you have to be, the highest level before you're ready for mentorship. And maybe the panel can give some perspectives on when is a good time to sort of raise your hand to be a mentor.
I'll let the panelists just jump in as they wish. I see Emily nodding. So I might just pass it to you first.
So I gotta say, the time to raise your hand is now, always, every single time. You can always add something to somebody to help somebody, whether it's a peer, whether it's someone who's coming up sort of behind you by a few years. Even honestly, I get from some of the women that I mentor, I get a lot of mentorship from them in terms of helping me address my problems. So I'd say that's just my initial thought is anytime, absolutely, you've always got something to offer.
Yeah, I would agree with Emily. Even as a student, like a second-year student mentoring a first-year student, or looking at high school students who need advice, I think to get women into STEM more at university is too late. We really need to start mentoring them when they're in high school or younger and getting them involved in the maths and the sciences right from the get-go.
I fully agree with Emily and Ruth, and any point in time in your career is a good time to be a mentor. And I myself have had people higher in their career mentoring me, and I've mentored people lower in their career in high school. And I feel like there's always room for improvement, and everybody can help each other.
Right. And I see a point in the chat about reverse mentoring. I think that's also an important one to consider, particularly as the dynamic in the workplace changes. There are things that I didn't learn in my education, computer programming, various technological things that I could totally use some reverse mentoring about. And I'm sure we could all find skills to share up, down, side to side, around in circles. I think it's just knowing more people is a very helpful thing. So at this point, I have another question, and I'm going to ask Jessica to ask her question. Give her a minute.
Hey, so I just put something in the chat. So confidence, it seems to be a theme throughout. Do you have any advice for engineers in the room who are struggling with a lack of confidence, or maybe just want to be more confident?
I can speak again if no one else wants to take this. I think there are a lot of things you can do to develop your confidence. As a student, I would say get out and get involved with student organizations and take leadership roles in them. It's a good way to start when you're younger and gain confidence. Organizing things, getting outside of your comfort zone is key. Like don't just sit in your bubble and ride along. Just force yourself to expand your horizons, do things that make you a little bit uncomfortable. And every time you do that, it will get a little bit easier each time. I used to hate these sorts of things, like being on a panel. It's terrifying to me, actually, but here I am outside of my comfort zone, and maybe next time it'll be a little bit easier. So even at my stage, I'm learning. And there are also different things like Toastmasters Club, for instance. It sounds maybe antiquated, but it's groups like that that teach you how to be more confident, how to speak in front of people, how to express your thoughts. So there's lots of help you can get as well.
Excellent, Ruth. I'll add on there too. One is, attitude. I'm a strong believer gets you half the way there. If you believe you can do it and you go in with a positive attitude, you're set up for success that way. The other thing as well is we tend to, and I find women do this a lot, we don't actually give ourselves credit for the things that we've done. And this is honestly something I'm just learning in the last year or so, is actually to look back and just say, hey, I achieved these things and I meant to achieve these things. It didn't happen by accident, and kind of trusting in that past success. I was finding myself thinking, oh, I can't do that and that. And I thought, okay, you do this all the time. You say you can't do it and then you do it. So when have you actually not been able to do it? And I went back and went, oh, okay, well, maybe not. So that trust in yourself, trust in your past success, and giving yourself credit for that, actually stopping and acknowledging that really, really helps with your confidence. Particularly when you're trying something new, you can kind of go back and say, well, I did something new 6 months ago and it worked out okay, and this is what I did, and I'm going to apply that same approach and I'm going to be successful.
I also think a helpful tip to building confidence, and I believe Diana touched on it earlier, is knowing that you're your biggest judge. Like if you feel self-conscious about asking questions or getting involved in something, no one's judging you like the way you're judging yourself. So don't be afraid to get involved and out of your comfort zone.
Thank you. Oh, Moni, go ahead.
Can't hear you.
Okay, I have something else to say. Also, my best moments when I feel confident is when I'm writing my resume. Then I have to look back and I say, oh, is that me? And it's like, wow, I did this, I did that. And now that I'm working in my work, every time I do a performance review, then is when I realize, oh my gosh, I have done these things. And you get a nice summary, like you're saying, Emily, looking at what you're doing every time. So my goal now this year is to be tracking those achievements so I have them more, like I can see them more visible.
And believe it when somebody tells you you do a good job. I had an epiphany just honestly 6 months ago, where I'd gone through something and I realized that when somebody told me I did a good job, I automatically thought, oh, they must have low standards. Like, that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So believe it when somebody tells you that you did something well. Just say thank you. And go, I know I did.
Love that. I have another question. And this one is to Nicole Simon. So you talk about, pursuing passions and following your heart. And there was sort of that theme throughout as well. What about people who aren't really sure what their passions are, or it just isn't so obvious? Like Alyssa, you knew right from the get-go you wanted to be a scientist or a doctor, and Ruth, like right away, you knew what you wanted to do. So yeah, I'm curious about that.
So that's a very good question, and it's actually really challenging to answer. So I would say I was also one of those people that kind of sort of knew what I wanted to do. Like it took me a little bit later in life to find out what I wanted to do, but I still always loved science, math, physics, all that kind of stuff. So I was passionate about the sciences in general. To find something that you're passionate is basically just to find that thing that makes you happy, the thing that kind of drives you to continue and drives you to do something. I'm not very good at explaining these things, so apologies, but find that thing that does make you passionate. Get out of your comfort zone and try new things. Try to find that thing that does make you want to, continue to do those things, right? Like, for example, Ruth, you said it earlier, this is not one of your comfort zones, right? This is also way outside of my comfort zone too. So this was interesting to me. So, but it did make me have to remember kind of why I decided to do engineering and why I decided to go into nuclear engineering. And I started to remember what gave me that passion in the first place. And that's I'm sorry, I don't have anything else to add other than try to find that thing that does make you passionate and step outside of your comfort zone and look for things that traditionally you may not think so. Like you may not think that would be in your area, in your wheelhouse.
Thank you. I also want to just add quickly that your passions can change. They're not written in stone, and it's okay to change your mind later. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to ask this one. I'm just going to read it, and pardon me. It is very difficult to find part-time or remote positions in engineering. Has anyone needed to work part-time for disability or other reasons? How difficult was that experience? And how do you advocate and create positions for those who may need to work part-time or remotely for disability or other reasons?
That's an excellent question. Maybe I'll answer I could start with the second part of it. Obviously, we all had a good experience of working remotely over the last few years with COVID. So I think that has really helped to push forward in many workplaces a more flexible environment. And I'm even seeing that now that we're more or less back at work. We've still got some provisions for work from home for various reasons. Sometimes it's a childcare thing. Sometimes it's weather, or just we've personal preference. We've accommodated that. But in terms of having to create a more inclusive environment, I would say finding those companies that really value that. One of the things I'm really proud about OPG right now, I'll put in a shameless plug, we've got our ED&I, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion action plan. And part of this includes, we've got hiring strategies and hiring goals that are exceeding, looking at what's available in the market and really looking to not only attract people to come to our company, but then also providing support once they're into the company in terms of employee resource groups or tools that are required, work accommodations as required for the individual, such that people can come into our environment and be successful. So I think that's the first thing, is doing some research around, particularly if you're going out into the workplace, finding those companies during interviews, asking about those supports that are available and those accommodations. And if you're not comfortable with the answers that you're getting, then that may be not a company that you're going to be able to thrive in.
And there was a second part to the question, which I think might be a little bit easier for all of us to think about, is how do you raise the voices and create space for those who do not communicate verbally?
Yeah, I think that's the easy part, Dan.
I think it's not easy in that way. I think we have to just remember that a voice is not a voice, and it could be by providing those inclusive technologies, and by having written components to interviews, or by having time for people to prepare a submission that might be pre-recorded, either visually or written. And I think that to me is a little bit more there's a little bit more flexibility in finding avenues rather than changing a corporate structure in terms of working remotely or part-time. I think it's just remembering that some people are visual learners and would prefer information visually and to communicate visually, and some people communicate completely differently. And it's not just people who can't communicate verbally, it could be language barriers or other information that way. And so that's why I thought it was easier. It's a little bit more of a more experienced challenge than the other areas.
No, I totally agree with all that. And I think for me, the first thing is that conversation, right? Is actually asking what do you need to be successful? How can we be successful? And then asking for what you need to be successful. Two wonderful things, and you talked about tools that I've really been happy to see us using in both in Teams is the chat function. We use the chat function very, very well to make sure a lot of voices get heard in our meetings particularly. And then also Teams has a closed captioning. Actually, both closed captioning, and it also has a translator. I was talking with a gentleman from France the other day, and he was using the Translate to be able to communicate better with me. But the closed captioning as well, we've had some really good support with it. It's not always bang on, as you can imagine, but it's been a really good tool for us.
I saw a moment ago, Dr. Lane had her hand up, but she has since put it down. Either, oh,
I'm up again.
You're up again. Okay, please go ahead.
Moni, I loved your video, and it was so lovely to have a male role model in your life being your father. And I too had a real my father was very, very supportive of me. And he taught me perseverance in times of difficulty. And obviously that was important to your father as well. And he guided you through some of difficult times in school. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Thank you so much for that. So I think it's really important in your career journey to have like that support system apart from, you know, family, building mentorship relationship and all of that. But for me, my relationship in terms of mentoring started first with my dad, and that comes from the place of not holding back, you know, when you're going through like challenges, you know, putting yourself out there and just speaking, learning from them. And, you know, for every other person as well, it doesn't have to be your dad. You could, you know, speak to your bosses at work, you know, you could speak to your colleagues to like share their experiences, ask for their ideas about something you're going through. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the time, so we'll move to what might be the last question, depending on the question. Gabriella, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. This is for everyone. So one of you mentioned that you looking forward, when you were younger, you wouldn't have expected to now be where you're at, or some of you are not graduated yet and will be, like Alyssa, in a year or two. And Moni, you also said that you're not yet where you want to be. So yes, this is for everyone. In a couple of years, if you could choose an engineering role anywhere in the world, any position, like what would be your dream role?
I see a lot of heads. So why don't we start with Moni?
Yeah, sure. So personally, if I'm to do this again, I'm gonna do it all over again. Like I'm still gonna choose engineering. Like I don't regret my career choice at all. And I believe that we keep evolving, we keep becoming better versions of ourselves. We keep unleashing our potential, and it's my personal dream to become the best version of myself, to become the best I can possibly be. I dream someday to become the president of a nuclear industry. I've seen a lot of amazing women rise to that position, and I believe I can do it as well.
Thank you. And continuing with the newer members, we're going to go to Alyssa. What does your dream job look like?
This is a very difficult question, and I'm not exactly sure where I'd want to be in the far future, like 10 years from now, but just thinking of right after school, my dream would be to come back and work at the CNSC again, probably for the same division I'm working for right now, which is the Darlington Regulatory Program Division. Yeah, so I've definitely enjoyed being part of like being in site and in station. So I think that is the goal for the future, maybe be an inspector for the CNSC and come back.
Perfect. And in no particular order, we'll go to Nicole.
I would also probably echo Moni's comments that I would probably do it all again too. Despite the fact that it was at times torture and painful to go through engineering school, and specifically nuclear engineering, I would also choose it again as well. Like I said, I still have my passion for nuclear. I still enjoy it. I love it. And I would choose nuclear engineering all over again. If I had to pick a dream engineering job, if I did do it all over again and I had to pick a different engineering job or a dream job, I probably would be, I would love to be one on the team designing reactors, or a team, sorry, I shouldn't say the team, a team designing nuclear reactors. That was my dream when I was through university. And then I switched to decommissioning reactors because at the time that's what we were doing. And now it's kind of, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would be building reactors. But yeah, interesting question.
Thank you. Ruth.
Well, I'm not in engineering, as I said, but I would also echo what others have said, that I don't think I'd change anything either. My career has been really fabulous, even though it wasn't engineering. But I did get to do physics, and that added a really nice complement to what later in my career became a more biology job. But it's really nice having the physics background to tackle the radiation issues in the biology field. So sometimes I think I should not have gotten so much into management, and I should have stayed more in the lab. You know, some days I have those days where I wish I was just more in the lab than I am now in front of my computer. But there are some aspects of managing that are really, really rewarding as well. So.
And Emily.
Great. Well, I love my job, and I'll echo the same as everyone. I don't think I would do anything different again. I love being an engineer and all of the opportunities that's afforded me. I would say if I were to look in, aside from retirement and just a bit of a distant future, one of the things I like about nuclear, and it speaks to me, is it's very rule based in nuclear, right? Where it's a little bit more open to, still rules-based, but a bit more open to use some innovation and new technology. So we've really started to go that way in nuclear, but it's a really slow ship to turn because we have such a strong basis in our obviously we want to be conservative in the nuclear industry. It's harder to test out some innovation. So I think if I were to pivot a little bit, it would be into an industry maybe that's a little bit more friendly to the new innovation, these things, use of artificial intelligence, that kind of thing, where you can play around a little bit more to get maybe some different results in a shorter time frame.
Thank you. And at this time, I'm going to thank all of the panelists for sharing your wise words and being so passionate about women's empowerment and offering us a glimpse into the rewarding and challenging and sometimes unconventional career paths that you might have had. So thank you all for participating. I would also like to thank everyone for attending today. This really would have been a smaller room of us talking to each other without your being here. We hope that you have enjoyed your session. We would like to thank the Ontario Society for Professional Engineers for their continuous support and organization, And we'd like to thank the YSTEM initiative at the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission for their continuous support. And most importantly, and a very special thank you to all of our NEM partners who are noted on the slides that you're seeing right now. Please join us at all of the other NEM events and check out nemontario.ca for a complete list of all of the events in the final week of this month. Thank you again, and I really hope that you have a wonderful day and good luck in your careers.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you.